Hello, Corey and Tiffany here. Wait, that's not right, is it?
No.
No, that's not right. Ryan and Ashley here from New Brunswick. We're stepping in for Corey and Tiffany today to talk about pivoting and the New Brunswick market specifically. It's been a hot topic lately about New Brunswick, hasn't it?
It really has been.
Yeah, there's been some legislation changes that have been tabled and are looking to be passed through the vote. And there's a bit of uptick in traffic and talking about that, isn't there?
There is. Hopefully here soon it'll all be, I guess, smoothed out.
Yeah, but really, no, there's nothing scary about it though.
No.
I mean, you look at New Brunswick. For those that don't know, New Brunswick has put forward a table to bill to talk and put rent control in place. So the rent control is a 3.8% cap on the rent increases, which isn't that bad. And places like Ontario have had rent caps for a long time.
Yeah.
There's still people investing there, isn't there? We have some good people here to talk about the changes that are happening, pivoting to see what they're doing here in New Brunswick that we'll bring on as guest talkers here shortly. But pivoting as an investor, it's all about survivability, and our ability to pivot is what keeps us in this market longer. If we're not able to pivot, then we're probably not going to last as long as those other people, are we?
No, not at all.
No. It reminds me about thinking outside of the box, to be honest. You have a box, you have a little frame, and you have inside this little frame your world. And in this little frame, if you exist only in this, you don't see what's outside of it. You're not able to make those changes and adapt to what comes. One of the things that reminds me about that is actually a quote. And the quote was actually about William Shakespeare back in the day. It was, "A jack of all trades is a master of none." You look at that quote, and inside that little frame, that quote, it's an insult. It's not a good thing. How can you take that as something that's positive? How can you see the positivity in that? But when you take a look back and you take a look at the larger view, the quote about William Shakespeare was actually, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one." And I think that really hits home about pivoting in this market today, because you can be a jack of all trades, but if you're only focused on one thing, then your chances of failure are higher. But a jack of all trades in this situation is better than a master of one, because now you have the arsenal, you have the ability to adapt and pivot and go in different direction as the market dictates. I think that's an interesting point to take today. All right, so I think we're going to bring on Andrea first here in New Brunswick. Say hello as you guys are checking in. Who do we got on here? We got some people coming on. Hey, Melanie, nice to see you on here. All right, guys, let's bring on Andrea here. Hey, Andrea.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Good.
So you're a new investor in New Brunswick, aren't you?
Yeah, so we've only been investing in New Brunswick for 6 months now.
Only 6 months? It feels like a lot longer than that.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like you've been here a lot longer than that. I'm not really sure why.
No, I know. First steps in New Brunswick were August, September of last year. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can say from perspective of all New Brunswickers, we're happy to have you.
Well, thank you very much.
What don't you tell us what you're doing in New Brunswick today?
Yeah, so we live here in the GTA, but obviously, other than our principal residence here in Oshawa that we suited, we decided to go out to New Brunswick. We are definitely the long-term buy and hold, cash flowing properties. So right now, in the last 6 months, we have 3 properties that we are burying. So we're increasing the value and hoping to refinance in the next month or two. So we have 3 of those on the go, and then another one with an accepted offer right now that hopefully will lift conditions by the end of the week. But
okay, so you have an accepted offer on another property, given that these legislation changes are coming.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're not scared of them?
No, I mean, I think if anything, first of all, we were definitely fortunate that the 3 properties we got, we basically got vacant possession on all but 1 unit. So the 3 properties are basically 7 units, and we only inherited 1 tenant. and we were able to vacate that tenant before all of this came into place. So for us, in that sense, we're able to go in now with market rents, and so in that sense, we were very fortunate. But it didn't scare us away. Now we're still looking at opportunities, and they're the duplex that we have an offer on right now. The numbers work. So I mean, as long as, I think it's more than ever, what this has shown, or how we've had to pivot, is make sure that whatever we're looking at and offering on, if it's tenanted right now, it needs to be cash flowing right now. And the numbers need to work as is right now for at least 3 months or 6 months until we can turn over or do what we need to do, right? But so it needs to work now. It needs to cash flow with minimal improvements or us touching it for a good 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, so you're looking at properties now that are cash flowing, that work now, so that you're walking into your adventures prepared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And has BRRRRs always been your strategy, or is it something that you're changing?
Yeah, no, BRRRRs have definitely been where we've seemed to have gone. We definitely, because we BRRRRed our own principal residence, we knew it. We saw the potential in Lyft, in New Brunswick to do this, and we found properties that it worked for. So we like it. I think there's still an opportunity to continue doing that. That's still our kind of, because we're looking at cash flow. For us, that is the strategy that works best for us. Right. We'd all love a turnkey property that cash flows, and if we find one, then hey, great. But yeah, no, we're not scared of it. It just needs to work now. It may not be the prettiest right now or have the tenant demographic we want right now, but if the numbers work right now, then, we're okay with that. And then we know we can improve it 3 to 6 months from now.
Exactly. So your strategy hasn't changed at all. And You're still going for these properties that are, cash flowing, that work, and you still have plans on plans on plans, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have plan A, B, and then eventually once you're in there and, you find plan C and D that you didn't even know you were there or you needed. But yeah, it's amazing how it's true. You go in with one plan and then you realize, okay, it changes. And so you do learn to pivot and change with it and accept it. And I think Corey and Tiffany and Melanie too uses that word figure outable. It's true. Everything is figure outable. I mean, it may not be what you initially wanted, but you can figure it out. You can make it work.
Yeah. And actually pivoting is one of the hot topics right now. I haven't heard it as much as I'm hearing it now as when we first started the pandemic. We actually pivoted on a project, didn't we?
Oh yeah. Our very first project we pivoted on actually right out of the gate. We went into it thinking that it was going to be a flip at the beginning of the pandemic, and it ended up turning to be a BRRRR buy and hold. And we still have it in our portfolio now.
Why did we have to pivot on that one though?
Well, I mean, the beginning of the pandemic brought us to supply chain issues, and then we come into, while we're new investors, so then we become the testing out contractors. And if anybody knows this game, you test out 3 or 4 before you actually get to the person that you are meant to be with. And that's where we're at now, is that we have our contractors down pat. But we pivoted so many times. We went into this thinking, oh, it's going to be easy. It'll be something, it'll be a fun little project while the pandemic starts for me and my son. Yeah, fun. And then all of a sudden, it just out of nowhere, we had to pivot. We've been doing it all along, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not
that's where you think that everything is going to be easy. Did you think everything was going to be easy?
Like, not easy, but I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be a beautiful, 2-week thing like on HGTV. But I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I think we're all here because we see that it makes sense. So yeah, it's going to ebb and flow and you're going to kind of go nuts the first couple of times. But in the end, you just keep thinking, no, I know this works. This is going to work out in the end. We just got to figure it all out. But yeah, we all have that belief and we know we're here for a reason. We know real estate investing at the end, it's going to work. So
right. So your whole perception is that everything can be figured out. Right. And that's a great attitude to have as an investor. And, that's one that shows just how long you're going to be in this adventure, right? You're not going to be somebody that hits a wall and all of a sudden backs out, because that's what a lot of investors do. They hit the wall and they don't know how to adapt. And ultimately, I think that's because a lot of investors don't have the community that we do either. They don't have the resources that we do.
True.
Yeah. That is one of the biggest challenges, is having those people to support you through and show you that there's ways to, hello all here from Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I don't know who that
No.
is, but if you're online there, you can join StreamYard and have your name shown up. But I thought that was pretty awesome there. So if you had a piece of advice to somebody that was new, Andrea, to investing, what would it be?
Honestly, find your tribe, find a group, whether it's Fearless or Ignited or whatever it is. But and then they say all the time, right? Your team, and for us, definitely having a realtor that knows what we want, why we're doing this, what we're looking for. With this particular property that we have under, an offer accepted on, we had said to our realtor, okay, no more duplexes. We're good. We want to, start scaling. But then, she's like, hang on, I know you didn't want this. I'm bringing it to you because you own the next door. It's a property that we already own that's next door. And she sent us, the numbers work. And I thought, you got to see it. And I'm like, you're right. And the numbers work now as is. And so, I didn't go looking for it, but if you've got a realtor who knows what you want, in this case, cash flowing property, I would say, start with that. It starts with the team, like we started interviewing and building our team before we, put an offer on something or decided to pick something off MLS and go for it on our own. No, we made sure, especially because we're out of town, that we had somebody that would have our back, and understood where we were coming from, that, we're not going to buy up all this and be, slumlords or something like that. No, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is what we need. Can you help us? And, what can we do to help you reach that goal? So having that, that realtor investor focus who understands us, is huge, and it's a great place to start, and somebody local. Yeah.
And you know what you're saying is adaptability, and your ability to adapt to what comes your way is not unlike pivoting. You may not be pivoting completely, but you're still adapting, and that's, as investors, what we need to do is adapt to every change, adapt to every circumstance, adapt to deals coming our way that may not be what our mold originally was for. But now you have other options. No, that's amazing perspective, Andrea, and I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and bring on Hermel. What do you think? Let's see who's that. Hey, Hermel.
Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Good. So you're also a Brunswick investor, right?
Yes. Born and raised here, and I figured, well, might as well play in my own backyard.
That's awesome. Why don't you tell us exactly what you're doing in New Brunswick and how the changes or recent announcements have affected you, while we wait for Colin to put the kids to bed, and we'll join him in for a nice little roundtable with everything.
Okay. Well, we started off just last August, after buying our own income property in March the 2021. We joined Ignited, and then it kind of snowballed from there. Bought a couple of duplexes, got JVs on them, and we decided to go big or go home. So we decided to get into the bigger multifamily space. We just closed a deal on the 17th, 39 units in Bathurst. Fortunately enough, that strategy for us from the get-go was a burr. So the new legislation coming in really doesn't affect us too much because we have to vacate to renovate. My project manager says that there's no way to do this with people in there. So we have to help them on their way to a new apartment. We've set in place contingencies for that. We have the moving fund. We have movers on hire ready to go, and we're even we're offering up to 3 months rent at their new place. Wherever they find, we'll pay up to 3 months rent. So they have not fully received the news yet, but we're deploying this coming the next few weeks. Unfortunately, the buildings they were in they're in rough shape. If I showed you photos, you'd understand the need for the renovation. So the goal is to create a better, safer place for future tenants. And we're staggering them in a fashion where there's some empty units now that could use some, or could finish the renovation. So instead of doing a bulk renovation, what we're doing is we're moving people from one unit to a renovated unit and transitioning as much as possible. Of course, if they don't want to suffer the move to the same building or tolerate all the renovation going on, they're welcome to to relocate, and we'll help them on the way.
Awesome. So you bought 2 big multi-units?
Yeah, so these were a 3-building package, 39 units total. But by the time we're done, we'll have 40 units out of them. We're adding an extra unit. We've also recently have under contract a 16-unit in Sackville here in New Brunswick, and recently under contract another 24 units just outside Bathurst and Beresford. So it's in the greater Bathurst area. Another 24 units out there. We're working on many more.
Good for you. With these units that you're purchasing, have you had to? Well, you know what? First, why don't you talk about what are the legislation changes that are happening in New Brunswick?
So rent caps, that's a twofold. So the rent cap itself, 3.8%, and being retro to January 1st of 2022. So if we go back in time, that would be great. But these things still have to be, or these legislations still have to be, passed in the House of Legislature. They need to be read in-house. They need to be voted on in-house because they're part of the budget the finance minister released. Also, the second fold is that you can't evict tenants now without just cause. You can't just say we're terminating your lease. You're on a month-to-month. At the end of next month, you're terminated. Bye-bye. You have to have just cause. Just cause. Go ahead.
I was gonna say those haven't been passed yet, right? Like that wasn't included in even the tabled budget, right? Those are what the government plans to introduce.
So they're also introducing this no eviction unless they have a good cause. So that's something that has to be voted as well. They're saying, a start date March 22nd in good faith. That'll be voted in House, but it's still not law until it's law. So we'll hope that they'll find a middle ground somewhere, and if not, we'll adapt. That's what we're here for. We're going to pivot. There's ways to make leasing for tenants a little more flexible or landlord friendly, and there's always the rule of have an agreement with your tenant, have a good rapport. Make sure that if you move ahead with the change or a move out, make it a mutual agreement. That's what I was trying to get. Mutual agreement, and that way everything can move forward positively and nobody gets bitter feelings about it.
Yeah, so have mutual agreements with your tenants if you're buying something, and that goes a long way to helping. Actually, before this call, I just got off the phone with our realtor, and our duplex that we had under contract, the seller of it, his family is living in the unit, so he had offered it to us on vacant possession. And knowing that the rent caps are in, we had said that, we'll go ahead with the vacant possession unless they want to sign us new leases at the market rent. Getting off the phone with the realtor, he said, yeah, they agreed to your new rent. They're happy to stay and sign new leases. So, and that's just one small way that you can kind of make a difference in your strategy.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing we make sure as well is this is a good time to reflect on how much people have been paying for properties, how much competition there is. Like, it's a really hot market, right? So if you overpay, someone has to pay for it. So and a lot of people have been asking humongous prices now for their properties with underperforming rents. So these owners that are trying to sell these properties with underperforming rents will have to have a reality check and say, well, I can't sell this, or nobody will buy it at this price. That's what's going to happen. It's going to level the market a little bit, make it a better playing field for it. I don't demand we'll still drive the market, but those overpriced bidding wars will have to end. Otherwise, you're buying a property to have it fail. So it's not a viable business model.
Yeah, and you're right. The bidding wars may be affected, and in our experience, what we're seeing is that the lack of demand just means that people are willing to take these undercuts to prices and stuff. Ashley does a lot of the tours, and she sees a lot of the units are under market rent, but they're asking for higher prices, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the challenges as you put out is that, yeah, you're right. They're asking for higher prices, but how far under rent do you say the units are that you're mostly in?
Oh, 4 $500 sometimes,
Yeah.
if not more. Like we've gone into units where you're getting a 4-bedroom flat, and the older fellow was living there for what, I think 20 years, and he was paying what, 550, 600?
450.
Yeah, 450. Heat and lights included
Yeah.
for 20 years, and it was a nice, happy outcome. We ended up getting him into his own home, first time ever. But the unit that he was previously in now rents for like 1550, 1600 a month. Like that's a huge jump, because again, it was huge, never was updated, never. It was way under market value. It just, everything needs so much love here.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems in New Brunswick, is that a lot of the properties have been kept under market rent, and that's partially because there wasn't a rent cap. If you think about not having a rent cap, it doesn't force landlords to increase their rent. And one of the pivoting or adaptability changes that you're going to see happening here is now these tenants, unfortunately, that were getting years and years of that rent increases are now going to get regimented every 12-month market cap increases, because if not, we get left behind.
Yeah.
So, there's not always good and there's not always bad. And that's one of the negative aspects to tenants, right?
Mm-hmm, definitely. See, one thing we take into consideration whenever we look at a deal is we look at the break-even point. At what rent does the building pay for itself, but no profit for no one? So the last deal we closed, we were like at a break-in point of $450 a month. At $450 a month, nothing was unpaid, but we weren't making money. So we're like, well, if the current rents were higher than the $450 a month on every unit, so that played in our favor. But like I said, those buildings were in need of major TLC, and just to make it safer for everybody. And so yeah, we have no choice. We're putting in 6-figure repairs, by a big margin. So for us, that's, we have to add that element of making those safer and nicer places for people to live, and have a little bit of climate control, and newer appliances, and tiles on your floor that are not coming apart, stuff like that.
Exactly. So I see Colin's back here. I'm gonna add him into the stream, but I'd love to still hear a little bit more about what you're doing there, Hermel. So cool. Colin's an investor that moved from Ontario, I believe it was, to New Brunswick, and he invests heavily in New Brunswick. So it's going to be interesting to get his perspective. Hey, Colin, add you in here. Am I right, Colin, that you did move in from Ontario?
Yeah, he's from.
Yep, can't hear you there, but that's fine for now. So, Hermel, does it change how you look at New Brunswick for investing?
Me?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, it does in the sense where I'm gonna triple check things. I'm gonna be in my due diligence phase. I'm gonna make sure like the leases are up to par. I'm gonna make sure that the current conditions are favorable for investment. So I'm gonna be a little more picky at what we decide to work with, and I'm definitely not overpaying anymore. That's like some items you get into the bidding war, but I'm like, that's our motto now. We don't overpay.
Right. So that's one of the effects of the market and pivoting, is now not overpaying, because prior to this, we had the option of paying the higher amounts, knowing that we could optimize the building more. Mm-hmm. And now that's going to be affected a little bit. So it's going to change the landscape. And I think, Andrea, you said the same thing about how you change how you look at the properties. They have to cash flow, right?
Yeah, they have to make sense now as is. Can't be in the negative.
That's right. Unless you plan on, going for the speculation play, or, hoping and praying, which as investors, I don't think is the best strategy to take.
No, I'm not a gambler.
Well, that's a good thing, right? So, and in this market, that's probably the best way to handle it. Pivoting or not pivoting, adapting or not adapting, not gambling is probably one of the better choices. So, Hermel, you're going to keep investing in New Brunswick?
Oh, for sure. Until things cool down, or we decide to diversify our investments. But we have a certain door count we want to get to before we start moving to other provinces.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay. So if you're going to keep investing in New Brunswick, what's something that you're going to do differently now? Is there anything, if anything, that you're going to do different in your investing strategy other than how you look at the properties?
Well, if you look at how leases are, if you look at the month-to-month lease, the yearly lease, or the term lease, you don't see term leases often, but that's also a way to basically put an end date to a tenancy, and then negotiate with the tenant, moving forward, and have a mutual agreement. So that opens the conversation. It doesn't have to be behind the tenancy board all the time. It doesn't have to be, like so tight, but so maybe moving forward, all we'll do is term leases. So we haven't really deployed our full strategy on that yet. We're going to see what gives us the softer blow. So how to pad the bat, from the government coming our way.
Oh, that's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
What would you give as a recommendation to somebody that's new to New Brunswick, that wants to come to New Brunswick for the first time? What piece of advice would you give them?
Get your team going, for sure. It's hard to find investor focused thing here, so you have to really look and dig, and then if you have friends that are doing it, or if you know people that are doing it, reach out and see if they're willing to share their team. It's not top secret. we tend to stick together as investors. Like I've asked Colin for some advice so many times, and for some contact so many times already. So I think kind of all share the resources, but together, that's the most important part. And after that, look at markets that are either favorable for vacancy, like very low vacancy rates, very high growth, and stuff, and know the area you're investing in, know it well. Travel there a few times, ask people, what brings people here. Is it a touristy town? What are the attractions? And just get to know the demographics. Every little community in New Brunswick has its own charm, and has its own
That's for sure.
areas of interest. So I've lived around New Brunswick basically my whole life. I've gravitated to every city except St. John. So you got St. John covered, man.
Yeah, well, you can still come down and visit sometime. Go on down to St. John.
For sure.
Beginning of June, we'll have a little get together in St. John, maybe in Moncton, and we'll skip around, almost like bar hopping among the cities.
Yeah. So having had that insight, having lived in every major city, kind of gives me a bit of background as to, this spot's a nice spot in town, or so that's where my experience comes in. Having been a New Brunswick resident my whole life. Mind you, some people have stayed in New Brunswick in the same city their whole lives too. So it doesn't mean they're nomads like I was.
Yeah, exactly. So far we have two investors that are investing in New Brunswick who are pivoting in how they take their strategies, how they view properties, how they assess cash flow, whether they're overpaying or not overpaying. That's a big one. But what we haven't heard yet is, I'm done with New Brunswick. I'm running away. All we've heard so far, if the consensus is just adapt, just pivot. Andrea, you're in Ontario, right?
Yep.
You have rent caps there. You have one of the most stringent markets there are, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, compared to this, this is okay. That's not so bad. Like you said, it's not a game changer. It doesn't, I mean, you adapt, okay, but it still makes sense. The numbers still work. So, absolutely.
That's amazing. So now it's see if we can go 3 for 3 here, because we have Colin, who is in New Brunswick, up next that we're looking to hear for. Colin, introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Colin Ernst. My wife's Nicole Fiore, and we're Coast to Coast Homes Canada. We actually just recently moved to New Brunswick in November because we have a lot of investments here. We like the market, we love the people. I am a maritimer, just one province over. But no, we absolutely love it here. We do a lot of investing here, and just it's great to be back home. We were in Ontario before this for a few years. We do own rentals there, so we kind of were used to these rules, as Andrea said. Rent caps more stringent. Last year we couldn't even increase the rent at all, and their laws are vastly different from New Brunswick. And then before that, we were in BC, and we were renters in BC, so we know all about that side of it as well. And again, cap rates, extremely low vacancy, really high prices. So we've kind of been around the country. We've also lived in Montreal, bought, rented there as well. So that's a different beast altogether, and as well as sporadically throughout the Maritimes, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and specifically of living there. And it gives us a good feel for the country. So I like a lot of the points people were making here. Like every province has its ups and downs. Rules change. We have to pivot, with COVID and everything that's kind of happened. So I think these discussions are great to have for everybody. They really benefit the community, and I'm here to answer some questions. And Ryan, just throw it out there at me, and we'll see what sticks.
Did you say you rented it in BC?
Oh yes.
Okay, he rented in BC apparently. I didn't know that.
Yeah. We moved out there from Montreal, and that was in 2013, and we couldn't afford. We couldn't afford anything there to purchase. They still had vacant land, lots, small, mind you, but they were about 800,000 at the time. And we had just purchased a triplex in Montreal, I think for 650, somewhere around there. So that was the start of our real estate investing, getting into BC, and it was very, very eye-opening to see that there. And different market, but again, like similar to BC and New Brunswick, and basically all of Canada, very low vacancy. Very high prices, but you have rent caps, and you have really good tenant-friendly laws, which I have no issue with. One of the things that we kind of adapted to is tenant vetting, which I feel is very important, especially in provinces where, like Ontario, your backlog 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 months to process a tenant who may not be paying rent, or who's doing damage or being negligent to your property, things like that. So just it's interesting what's happening here, and I think it's a great conversation for us to all have.
Yeah. So your experience as a renter in British Columbia, how does that compare to New Brunswick legislation and the rules here?
So when we were in BC, we were renting. Our landlord had sold their home, and we were living in a garden suite, is what they call them, the basement suite. And the new owners were coming in, and they wanted us to stay, and everything was fine. And then when they purchased, then they said that they wanted it for themselves, which we all know was they wanted more rent, because our landlord did not increase rents for a few years while we were there. And that's another topic I'll touch on that, and impacts New Brunswick as well. She decided not to increase the rents on us for the first few years. And then when they went to sell, they increased the rents, which was fine. We still objected because we didn't want to pay more, but we understood you were being very fair to us. So obviously that was fine. And then once they purchased it, then they said they want it for themselves, which is one of the laws here that New Brunswick has as well. Now that if you want to end a tenancy, if your family's moving in there, you're moving in there, you're allowed to do that. And that's one of the exceptions. So that was a little difficult. We decided to leave just because of the nature of everything. And they owe you a certain amount of money. I can't remember what it was at the time, 3 months rent, 2 months rent, if you leave, and they don't hold up their part of the bargain, which, to be honest, in BC at the time was nothing. There's a couple $1,000s. They're getting quite a bit more for rent a month, so it would actually be worth it for them just to pay the fine and do it. It has since gone up to, I think, a year of rent. I haven't been following, but it's gone up quite a bit. So there are repercussions if you're not honest and don't do what you should be doing and following the law. So I'll stress that with knee-jerk reactions that people may have here in New Brunswick with the laws changing. Follow the laws. They're brand new. Not everybody knows them yet. Your tenants are going to be, this is all in the news, they're going to be looking into it as well. So just make sure that you're following the guidelines. And if you don't know, New Brunswick's fantastic. Call Service New Brunswick, call the Rentalsman Tribunal, and they answer the phone. They will answer your questions. I've been on the phone a lot lately with this stuff, and I feel like something for New Brunswick was great is that they actually are there to help you. One good thing I'll say about New Brunswick versus like Ontario, when there is an issue with the tenant and it does fall within these guidelines, they're there to support you. You know, they work through the problem with you, and if at the end the tenant has to be evicted for the reasons stated that you can, they're there to support you. Ontario, they're backlogged for months, and there's nothing you can do, and I always hear that. So here, that's something that nobody really talks about, that you can actually, follow through, and it's not backlogged like other provinces are for processing time, which can be very stressful.
Yeah, so you're saying use the RTT here, right?
They're accessible. It's wonderful. Like, they're there to enforce the rules. They protect landlords and they protect tenants, but they are accessible. And
that is one of the benefits of New Brunswick, is that they are here to protect us as well too, and they don't just shun us as landlords, and they're not just all about the tenants. They do take into consideration all sides of the story, right?
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that in New Brunswick we're doing now, and that's adapting to the changes, because this has all been introduced and not yet approved through legislation, not been voted on or ratified. We're getting calls from our tenants as they're hearing in the news, just like everybody else, and they're saying, hey, are you going to refund? And our biggest suggestion to them is to say, honestly, we don't know what's going on yet. And, that's a fair assessment to say we don't know yet. And we direct them to the RTT because they are available.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell them, call the RTT, take their advice.
Yeah, that's what we do. Like, so far, nobody's really come back to us. We did issue rent increases this year, which, based on the law, will be retroactive. But even when we rent, we like Mel's saying here, when we introduced our rent increases, there is also like, hey, we are going to do improvements. We're going to do this, that, and the other, and make their lives better, reduce their costs, things like that. And there was no backlash at all when we issued our rent increases. And they knew that we were improving the suites, improving their life, their quality of life. So that was great. Like, I mean, it's an open conversation that you have with your tenants, right? So now with this, we haven't had anybody come back and state, are you retroactively doing it? I mean, obviously we're going to follow the law, but as you said, we're not 100% sure has that nailed down yet. And one thing that the other law, I didn't catch the very beginning of this, but about the provincial tax rate. So the property taxes, they're comprised of like the federal, the municipality, and the provincial. So it's just the provincial side that's going to be potentially reduced 50% over 3 years. As far as I can tell, we don't know what that looks like in terms of, is it equal over each year? Is it going to be front loaded, back loaded? We're not really sure. They should be coming out a month later. So April 1st is when the property taxes should be coming out. And then we're going to have a better idea of how that impacts our expenses.
Yeah, in this case, New Brunswick had actually delayed the property tax. Normally we have them by now, but because they were introducing the new legislation, and because there was a lot of complaints about the increases and all that, then the Brunswick government said, okay, hold on, let's reassess that and we'll delay them. So that's one of the good things about New Brunswick, because it's not all bad, is that they're willing to say, okay, hold on, let's reevaluate this, let's put a pause on this and figure this out. And that's what they did with the tax assessments. Yeah,
exactly. They did help out homeowners, right, and investors like us by offsetting some of your expenses. And that was a point I wanted to touch on. Everybody's focused on the rent cap. Okay, there is a rent cap. 3.8 is there's worse. Okay, 3.8 is okay. But I would say now a lot of people, let's focus on your expenses. What can you do? I don't believe that you can just, people would put their utilities onto the tenants. That's considered a rent increase now. It wasn't before. But there's other ways to save. I know, Ryan, you in particular, you're looking at, removing oil, replacing it with natural gas, things like that. Options like that are really beneficial to the environment and beneficial to the tenants and more efficient. And I would say look to incentive programs. NB Power, I believe, New Brunswick leads the country in terms of power rebates and programs. We're always looking at them. They're always making changes and tweaks, and they're very responsive. You get the money very quickly back instead of waiting, months and months and months. So look at those incentive programs. Scour the internet, scour the federal website, scour the provincial website, see what you can find. Talk to vendors. Some of them even do all the paperwork for you. To do the submissions. So look to reduce your expenses when where you can, and that could help alleviate some of the issues at the rent cap. So if income is restricted, where can you reduce your expenses at? So that's some exercises that we're experiencing right now and going through.
Yeah, so find ways to reduce the cost elsewhere. And if I'm not mistaken, Andrea, you're doing that right now, are you not? Natural gas conversion?
We're looking into it. We're getting quotes, yeah. So, but I mean, definitely even, in the one property that we're still looking at replacing the oil, just even bringing in the mini splits that, here in Ontario, that doesn't exist. We're like, what was that? But even just doing that will make a difference in your expenses, even if you're still with the oil tank for a bit, but just having that will make a huge difference.
Yeah, 100%. Did she say we didn't know what mini splits were?
Yes.
You didn't know they don't have those in Ontario?
I've never come across them.
Oh wow, that's one of the things I guess I just took for granted here in New Brunswick. We installed 2 of them in our home when we first bought our house.
No.
Oh wow, they're
you guys are electric heat here. Ontario's like a lot of people are on gas. It's different heating systems. People also call them heat pumps. People don't know the words, so sometimes a heat pump. Oh, okay, I know what that is. Like my family in Nova Scotia, they have them. New Brunswick, they have them. But in Ontario, I didn't really see them when I was there very often. But Canada doesn't make up a very big market on the worldwide sales of mini splits, something like 2%. So, but yeah, it just depends on where you live and what they use.
So other than reducing the cost, which is amazing, and yes, New Brunswick NB Power has incentives. You can also call utilities as well too, because they have a lot of incentives as the individual vendors. As you're saying, they have programs and cash for win backs, incentives for conversions. So I know, like, if you're on propane and you call up a utility company and say, hey, I'm on propane, I want to switch to natural gas, there's a certain amount of budget that they have set aside where they can say, hey, yeah, we'll pay you to switch to natural gas, because it's a win back for them a lot of the cases, because they'll have the natural gas all set up. Because propane at one point, it went really cheap in New Brunswick, so a lot of people converted from natural gas to propane. So if you were in that category, they will pay you to come back, and they'll do the conversion, and you can put a couple dollars into your pocket. So other than that, Colin, what else?
One thing I wanted to say about New Brunswick, like there's still opportunities here. There'll be a lot of, when we talk about investors, there's the fair weather investor who will see something and run. Just if you're really doing your due diligence, looking into the market, doing your assessment, running your numbers, there's still lots of opportunities here. Don't be afraid of that. And maybe you can negotiate prices a little bit more than you could before. Maybe you just have to change your strategy. Like there's so many different ways to invest. So don't let rules scare you. Just understand them, I think, is the important thing. Then adapt. Have conversations like we're having with your other fellow investors and be like, what do you guys think on this? And brainstorm and come up with some ideas. One thing I did want to mention, just because I heard it a few times here about having like a mutual agreement with tenants. Just be careful with that. We did talk to the rentalsman here, and we've seen it in Ontario. We've seen things happen where even if you enter into an agreement and then the tenant will complain, something happens, they will. I'm not going to say they're always going to side with the tenant, but if they look at the situation, there's a good chance that they will side with the tenant. So just be careful with that. There are proper ways to do it. There's not the proper ways to do it. We did pose that question to see, but the answer is like based on case by case scenario. So just be careful if you are going that route, that they could complain, come back and say, yeah, well, this is actually the same suite, same tenant, same lease, same everything, and they could side with them. So just make sure that what you're doing is above board, everything is okay, everybody understands. We just don't want to be caught doing a bunch of renovations in this case to make something better, and you always have to have an ROI for that to come back and bite you in the future. So just make sure that you're running, like I said, call the rentalsman, run it by them, and be honest with the scenario. Don't lie. Be honest, truthful, and see what they say. And if they say case by case, then just put that's a risk for you to weigh in when you're doing making your options of what you want.
No, that's an absolutely valid point. What you're saying is that, yeah, even if you are pivoting or adapting to your strategies, especially in a landscape like this where we don't know exactly what's happening, is just make sure that it's above board, and that the rentalsman or whoever is going to agree with it, it's going to stick. Because last thing you want to do is have a strategy that you're adapting to, get these new leases signed, and then all of a sudden go forward with the new plan and then have them revert it.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing point. What would you say is going to change with multifamilies?
So we do own multifamily here. Multifamily, the value is based on the NOI, so your income and expenses. So if you're well under market rent, the value of your building is going to be low. You can't force tenants out now, so you have to adapt and see, like I said, focus on the expenses. What can you do? Maybe that capital expense you're just about to put in, maybe you can't put it in just because the value is not going to be there. We just did an appraisal in January of our buildings with the anticipation of doing some work, and now we're reassessing this because the value is dropped because property tax assessments have gone up. We don't know the property tax yet, but assessments have gone up substantially. With rent caps, we did issue rent increases, but the government went retroactive with those as of January 1st. So that impacts our play. So take a moment, think about it, look at your NOI. That's what it comes down to, because somebody coming in to buy a property, it's going to be appraised at a certain value, and they appraise it. There's a few different ways that they can appraise it, but income and expenses definitely plays a role. So just be aware of that. So there could be some different strategies that you have to adapt to. But for us, we're just right now, we're reassessing, going through everything, waiting for these property taxes to come in to see how that helps. I did see in the chat, some people are talking about how much the assessments have gone up. Yes, they've gone up substantially in some cases. So in that case, here's Shad. Yeah. So basically, property taxes are going down 50%, but it's just the provincial portion of it. It's not
the double tax.
Yeah, it's not going to be cut in half, and it's going to be over 3 years. So, and assessments, if the market continues, will continue to go up, and that's what your taxes are based on. So as long as values are still going up, that will always go up. We'll know April 1st when they come up what that exactly looks like. But just be aware, in multifamily, this has a major impact. I like what Mel was saying about we're offering to move people, we're offering, incentives for people if they want to relocate. I mean, people are always migrating, people are always moving. If you can make that easier, because moving is one of the most stressful things that you can do. If you can make that easier on them, it's gonna, hey, this is a great time for me to move. I can be closer to my family. I have a new job. I'm going to be able to do this, and it's going to work. Or maybe I have a child or two now, and I've outgrown this suite, but it's home for 4 years. I kind of want to live my bachelor pad. All those things. Anything that you can do to help your tenants. Incentivize them if they want to leave and they're just waiting. Hey, well, here's an option here, and that's about being a good landlord, right? And understanding your tenants' needs.
Yep, we've actually done exactly that. So we had a tenant in our broad unit. Yeah. We bought the building, and the plan was to renovate it and boutique it because it was in pretty rough shape when we had bought it, and we knew that was part of our strategy. And the tenant in the top floor, their lease was coming to an end, and they knew what our plan was. So they reached out and basically said, can you help us? And we said, absolutely. We just finished another unit over here that's for the same price. Why don't you come over here? It's only a block away. And they were happy. They that was one of the things where if you adapt and pivot and work with your tenants as humans, you can always come to an agreement. You can always find a way, in most cases anyway, to work with them and still align with your goals.
Yeah, and it's like Corey and Tiffany say about like being a good human. We're all good humans. We all want to do the best. We're still running a business, but there's humans behind all of this on both sides of that, and we understand that. So just talk to your tenants. Have the conversation with your property manager about what the direction you want to go, and I think that's really important too. And they'll respect you for it, right? So I think these are some really great points to bring up, and this isn't going to stop us from investing in New Brunswick. Okay, it's not going to stop anybody here on this panel from investing in New Brunswick. We all see opportunity here, right? So
Definitely.
You're still going to look at properties, right?
Always.
Yeah. She'll be out kicking the boots on the street, looking at properties still, because we just hit 2 properties under contract in all this storm. Like, it doesn't stop us. We adapt. And part of the changes is some of our plans are going to change. They always will. They always do. They change even without legislation. We don't need legislation to force our changes, because we can walk into a building and say, oh, okay, I don't remember this wall being here. Well, let's change our plan. And that happens every day. So why is this any different? It's not. And one of the key components about this is that we're still going to be able to do renovations. We just need to justify them. And in talking to the rentalsmen, one of the things we need to make sure we're doing is we're not kicking people out just so we can go and put paint on and increase the value of the rent, because that's not in the spirit of the nature of this. Because we did need in New Brunswick ways to protect our tenants. That inevitably needed to happen. And it wasn't all that unexpected. How they did it was, and that's our job to adapt. But going forward, we're going to need to make sure that we're justifying our actions and justifying our renovations. And really, that's on us.
And it is a good thing, like you say. I mean, there will be less buildings that are falling apart. There'll be better tenants. Like, all in all, it's in the long run, it's a good thing.
Absolutely. So wrapping up, Andrea, what do you have to give as any last minute advice to everybody here? Having heard everything that you heard, what's the most valid point that you could share?
Oh my goodness, most valid point. No, I'm going to stick with it's all about your team. I mean, you got to have it. You can't do this on your own. You can't possibly, be all things. So just take the time, talk to people. Like Mel said, we all help each other. So it's not, there's enough out there for everybody. And yeah, you do more together than you do on your own. So just be open, chat. We all go at different levels too. I mean, nothing wrong. There's a strategy if you're comfortable with duplexes and triplexes, or I mean, if you want the bigger buildings, that's good too. I mean, there's something for everyone. But just create the relationships, build your team.
Amazing. So I know you already said this, but you're going to keep investing in New Brunswick?
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to adapt and pivot?
Absolutely. And as soon as we can, we're moving there. What are you talking about?
Oh,
I know, I heard it.
Yeah, we heard it.
We heard it live.
It's coming. You just,
Andrea,
we'll watch the video and make a side note. She said she's moving to New Brunswick here.
That is awesome, exciting. We would love to have you and Sean here in New Brunswick. The more Sean's on the Atlantic coast, the better.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? He's there. That's where he is right now. So, I mean, I feel like we're already sort of half living there. We're there every month. What can I say?
That's awesome. Thank you, Andrea. And Hermel, let me think. What is your strategy going to be going forward on your multis? Because I know that's what you're doing. You're buying a lot of multis, right?
Yeah. So again, we want to look at the best scenario for everybody. So how can we work with the current tenants, the current leases? How do we transmit to the seller that income valuation for these buildings are important? So if you overpay, at the end of the day, your numbers are not going to work. So if you do your math correctly, and have a solid strategy, if you're planning to BRRRR a building versus just a buy and hold, make sure that the structure you adapt is a workable one. We're in the business of providing, lodging for human beings. So let's start by acting like good humans, So down the line, that's what it comes down to. If everybody wants to run their business and make a profit, like everybody else, like coffee shop owner, if the coffee bean goes up, to sell the coffee is a little more expensive, right? But at the end of the day, we have to abide by regulations and stuff. So the multifamily space is a big space here in New Brunswick. There's a lot of opportunities available, and I think basically if the deal doesn't work, walk away and look at something else. If it's not favorable for your tenants, walk away, and there's always deals that turn up. So.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of our closing comments is that right now, while people are scared, it's a good time for Ashley to find some good deals out there that maybe, other investors are shying away from. Now's the time to find those good deals.
For sure.
What about you, Colin? Did we get your consensus? I don't think we did. Are you investing in New Brunswick continuously after this?
Yes.
Are you packing up and moving back to Ontario?
No, we're going to continue investing here. I mean, like I said, we could sell our bungalow in Ontario and buy a multifamily here if we want. Like the market's just crazy. But what I'll say is we talked about different strategies, what things can do to adapt. Something like a rent cap, if maybe your rents are below market, I mean, there are options like CMHC Select. Like you can go into that program where you can actually get more money out of your building on a refinance by doing affordability incentives. And maybe you thought you couldn't get there, but now you are, and you might not be giving up. You might be giving up a little bit of cash flow, but maybe you're going to be able to pull up more equity to buy another rental property. So, Andrea said, talk to your team, talk to your broker, talk to your banker, talk to your fellow investors. There's a lot of things out there that we can all work with to better our position and always make good investments. So just be open-minded, and maybe the one thing that you've been doing all this time, it's not going to work anymore, but pivot, right? That's what this is about, pivot, and what can we do and adapt. And I think there's so much potential here still, so don't let it scare you.
Absolutely. And our 9-unit on Douglas that we have under contract, the new CMHC Select, as part of our adapting, is one of the things we're looking into, because there's some great avenues there. There's some great things to check out. And if I'm not mistaken, Corey and Tiffany have a guest speaker on to talk about CMHC next week.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So guys, that wraps it up. Thank you all three of you for joining on here today. I think this has been great, and New Brunswick strong. We're going to keep investing.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir. Thank you.
you.
Take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody.